Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch and my guest is Barbara Smith. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, Gavin.
You have travelled this land a little bit and we've actually got some footprints where we've either crossed or left previously, but starting off with Kew. What was Kew all about for you?
I guess I was just a kid, but Kew had a nice river and it had the boulevard, and I had some family there. Mm-hmm. And Kew, it had a lovely tree-lined street where I lived. That was really nice.
Well, I had friends there too. I think it was in Yarra Street, just directly connecting to the boulevard. And you went to school where? Kew
Primary School, and Kew Primary School was actually in the same street that I lived, but I had to walk uphill to it. So it was about half a kilometre. And so from the time I was 6, I started school at 6 in grade 1. And Kew Primary School was good. It was good.
Okay.
It was a good place. I had some lovely teachers there.
Yes. And then your further secondary education was where?
It was in Camberwell, actually Canterbury. It was at what became Canterbury Girls High School, originally called Camberwell Girls or Mangara Road. And I had to travel on a bus and 2 trams to get there, or walk.
Okay, well there we are. Walking's good today, they say.
Yes, yeah.
And then you did many years later some counselling courses?
Yes.
And where was that and what did you get?
I actually attended the Australian Institute of Family Counselling, and they used and still use Box Hill, where in Whitehorse Road, where the old council chambers were.
Yes. Okay. All right, so there's a brush stroke for education. And what were some of the significant things in your adolescent years that stand out and affect what you do today?
I guess I was what might dubiously be called a rescuer, and I was the eldest of a whole lot of cousins, and so I often had to look after the younger cousins, and I even from primary school years used to occasionally bring home children who were in some sort of difficult distress circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would you say that there was some empathy and compassion all along in your DNA?
I think so, and my father was involved with the Burwood Boys Home, which was just up the road from where I'm sitting right at the moment, and he was also a probation officer in the Children's Court, and he had a lot of compassion. We often had children in our home who were the kiddies who didn't go home on holidays from the home because they didn't have anybody, and they were often the difficult ones. But I didn't know that. I just thought they were just kids who came to stay. Which was rather nice, really, because I didn't judge them or didn't, they were just fun.
So you had others than just brothers and sisters too?
I only had one sister, but my dad was also involved in Rover Scouts and various things, and his patron of his scout group was Alan Vickers of the Flying Doctor Service. So we met a lot of people, and had a lot of people at our home.
Okay. So during this time, here you are, good school education, nice area, Dad's well positioned, but something comes along and you've got to weigh a few things up. What happened for those that are listening?
Well, I guess I was a bit lost. It was the era when dads were a bit removed from their children. They were a bit distant, and Dad was a bit distant. He was older, and he was 43 when I came along. And so he was hoping for a son and got a daughter who was quite rebellious, and he did not understand me at all, and I didn't understand him. And so I think that during my teenage years I started to look for acceptance from males and from, so I got myself into a situation where I actually, in my looking for love, I actually, and I can't excuse it, but I became pregnant. and subsequently had an abortion.
Now, what runs through a young woman's mind with this unexpected pregnancy? You've got family name to think of. What?
Yeah, to me there was a lot of fear, an extreme amount of fear, and I think that's what drove me at the time to have the abortion, because I felt like I was just letting everybody down.
Yes. And was the young man interested in being a father?
He was a lovely guy who actually became a lawyer, but he was travelling the world, and he was in the process of moving on. And whilst I think to some degree he was very interested in me and as a person, and I saw him some time later, but he was not interested in being a father, and it would have, in his mind, have impeded his travels.
Yes.
So he was willing to pay for an abortion, yes.
Okay, so with all of those elements at play, you find yourself with a life experience that now you can speak to and relate to others in a similar boat. How has that transformed from your experience into the lives of others, and what you learned?
Well, I feel it does give me some legitimacy to speak, and I don't always speak. In fact, not many girls do I tell this story to, only if I feel prompted to tell it, because it's not about me. When I'm speaking with girls who I'm counselling or I'm supporting, it's about them and their experience, not about me. So I don't often do it, but it does, it always causes me to reflect, I guess.
Okay, so from a God perspective, everything is redeemed. Something that seems out of place and maybe bringing these feelings of shame and things turns into a positive. It does.
I agree. I think, we were talking before this interview about how nothing is wasted, and I that's how I definitely see it. I wouldn't say that God led me towards having an abortion, but as soon as that happened, I think he saw, I can use this, and that's, to me, a huge part of my journey is the fact that he not only redeemed me, but he redeemed some of my actions and turned them around and used them for good, and still is.
Well, thank you.
It's delightful.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll be back in a moment. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Barbara Smith. Well, here we go, Barbara, part 2. You shared some very intimate stuff in front of camera before. For those that may have just tuned in, you had an abortion as a younger woman and saw that even though these things occur, it's used for the benefit to help others. Tell me about a story. It goes over many years. We'll wind the clock back 30 years, and you had a conference with some young people who came up from Melbourne. And how did this story play out?
Yeah, well, there was a group of young people who came from the western suburbs in Melbourne, and we were all having a lot of fun. We did some adventurous things over the weekend. We also had some serious moments of Bible study and worship and things like that. But one of the young lasses in this group was quite quiet. And I did ponder about her, and I tried to draw her out, but I didn't have a lot of effect. And then a few months later, I actually visited the church where this lass came from in Melbourne, and I found that there she had a new baby. And it was all quite surprising and astonishing to me, because I had no idea that may have been the reason why she was so quiet when she was staying at our place. And I felt very much for her, and in the course of a conversation with her, I kind of singled her out, and she was a little bit isolated from her group of friends, I think. But I suggested that she come and stay with us for a few months, and she did, and came back numbers of times. I feel today really privileged to have been able to be a support to her, because she was a most lovely girl, and 5 years later I was her matron of honour at her wedding to a lovely guy who took on the little boy, who was 5 then, as her son, and they subsequently had 3 more children. But it's something that sticks out in my mind, because it showed me the value of being a support to someone who's vulnerable and in a sticky situation, especially either pregnant or with a single mum with a baby, maybe even a single dad.
Yes. Okay, so you do and have done for some while counselling in this area of, what shall we call, a woman having an unexpected pregnancy or sexual abuse?
Yes, I have, and I have for some years now, as well as fostering children who've been in those sorts of situations as well. And I guess I find it quite a buzz to see people grow and change because of the support they're given.
Yes. Now, Frankston, why is Frankston an important suburb?
Frankston's a funny sort of a suburb in a way, because it's got its beautiful parts, the beach and Frankston South and some lovely areas, but it's also got some areas of where there are a lot of needy people, and a lot of people who've found life very difficult. And so it's kind of like it's got many colours, Frankston.
Okay, and you do some supporting down there. Who with?
I actually spend 1 day and sometimes 2 days a week with a pregnancy assistants in Frankston who are in Young Street. They are all staffed by volunteers, and have some very lovely, passionate ladies who just love to give and listen and support, mainly women, but some guys who are either pregnant or have had a baby or have had an abortion. And I must say, I find working with them a really lovely experience.
So the summation of this is investing time into someone who's struggling either with life skills or unexpected pregnancy has dividends.
Absolutely. I suppose I talked about nothing being wasted before, and I guess for a long time I've thought that I don't want to waste my life. And I think investing in other people, and not everybody that I would invest some of my time in has those extreme difficulties, but I think investing in people is something that nobody can take away from you. Yes. They can take your house, they can take your money, you can lose your health, but nobody can take away from you those relationships you've had with those people that you've supported. Some of them might not even remember you, but they've gone on, they've moved on, and they've changed and grown, yes. and some of them might have experienced God.
And so, as a married woman, you've got how many kids now?
I've got 6 children. 5 of them are natural, and one of them is been a long-term fostering relationship, who I would consider my daughter.
Yes, and how many grandchildren?
10 grandchildren.
Okay, so it's not wall-to-wall carpet, but wall-to-wall children sometimes.
It is. Yes, there's 5 boys and 5 girls of those grandchildren, and they're all very gorgeous.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put joy?
Joy?
Yes.
Personal joy?
Yeah, personal joy.
Well, It's there a lot these days. I've had times when I haven't had much joy and it's been hard, but when the truth sets you free and you experience God in your life, and particularly the freedom that Jesus Christ gives, I think that joy just wells up and spills out and overflows, and if you can, you want to tell people about it.
Okay, well, thank you, Barbara. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and my guest is Barbara Smith. Barbara, your life is about growing up in a home with lots of people, right?
It is.
And that kind of prepared you for later in life.
Yes, I think it did. I sometimes reflect on it, how the many people in our home enabled us to have an extended household. And part of it was that I think you become accepting of people. You know, they're not so strange because you've lived with lots of different kind of people that have been visiting or they've stayed or whatever. And, you know, in fact, my father actually took in some elderly folk when we were in our, I guess my early 20s, late teenage years and early 20s. He actually took some elderly folk in, which broadened the whole spectrum. Okay,
so human nature in all its colours, bright colours and dark colours, has been presented to you, basically. And now you're able to speak into their worlds confidently.
I think so. I think so.
You were over in India recently?
Yes. Yes, I spent a couple of months in India this year, and I'd been a couple of times before, doing some volunteering with my husband in a refuge in Maharashtra.
Oh, tell us about that a little bit.
Well, it was very exciting in a way because years and years ago I'd heard about this mission and actually supported some children, probably 30 years ago, and then finally got the opportunity to actually go and volunteer there. So the best part of that was spending time with these girls, numbers of them who were orphans, but all of them from circumstances where their parents couldn't look after them. And so we lived quite closely with a group of girls who were between the ages of 13 and 17, and we got to know not only their names, some of them were difficult, and we got to know their names, and we got to have some input into their life.
So, Barbara, your experience in India only reveals that the three most dangerous words can be, it's a girl.
Yes, it certainly is, Gavin, for a girl in India. In most places of India, to be a girl means that you are not wanted, that you can be used and abused and thrown away. You know, some babies are found on railway tracks or on the door of a temple or somewhere. Okay,
now winding back to the fact that you had an abortion, and where does the hope come for where that wonderful child is today?
Well, I had a really healing experience after I was convicted that I had done a lot of wrong in my life, and that I believe that healing that I had at that time showed me that that baby, God was looking after that baby and was in heaven with him, and that I didn't need to worry anymore about that, even about what I'd done, that God had forgiven me, and he was in control.
Good. There's a wonderful film on DVD at this stage. It's called Heaven is for Real. I don't know whether you read the book or saw the film.
Yes, I have seen it.
But it does bring a perspective of great hope for young women who are perhaps pacing the floor at night, wondering about their child.
Their child, yes. I mean, God, who looks after even the little sparrows, and one can't fall to the ground without him, he can quite well look after our little babies.
I think so. Well, what would you like to say to anyone watching the program?
I think I'd say don't give up or give in. God cares about you. He loves you. He sent his son to redeem you and to redeem your circumstances and turn it into something wonderful. If you trust him, he will. But I'd also say seek out some help. Go find a place. Look on the web for a place that will support girls in a difficult circumstance. There are people who care, and that often what seems to be the hardest, most difficult thing in your life can actually turn out to be the most wonderful. And I think having a baby isn't the hardest, most difficult thing. It's actually a tremendous joy. But if you have gone down that other track, God can still redeem it. He can turn your life into something wonderful where you can not only be blessed, but you can support other people.
Yes. So you have wonderful parents to thank, and a house full of others who visited, and there was always a spare bed or an open front door.
Yes, yes. And if you're in those circumstances, you know, don't be afraid to offer a bed to somebody or to take someone into your home. You know, we're all a bit strange, and some of us a bit stranger than others, but, you know, I believe that the Bible tells us that we should be hospitable, and hospitality often does mean opening your door. It doesn't necessarily, but it may mean giving a bed or a year or two of your life to invest in somebody. So I think I'd say that, but you may not be in a position where you can open your home. If you can't, you can share your finances, you can pray, you can write letters to politicians. If you want, you can even go and see a politician and give your view. And so you can change your world.
The scope there for people, and particularly this generation, to make a difference is full of possibilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good. Just go for it. Go for it. Doesn't matter where you're at or what, just go for it.
All right. Well, Barbara, thank you for all that inside information. And you've been watching Support Life. That's all for our program today. Join us again next week. Goodbye.